big, like bright smile on her face all the time. She was very full of life.
6 o'clock in the morning, phone rings, and it's Greg saying that she never came home.
She had been, in my opinion, stuffed into the forward in a very unnatural position.
He's not really crying. He doesn't seem emotional at all. He's just like a stone.
Who is Miss Jennifer?
And then you get the bombshell. There's a girlfriend in the mix. Well, already the red flags start going up.
All these years, all I've ever wanted was justice for what happened to my mom.
I hope that all of them can find some peace. And I really am sorry that it happened the way it did.
We're here today in Cantonment, Florida, a small town just outside of Pensacola. Over 20 years ago, Sherri Malarik was found shot to death inside her minivan in this Winn Dixie parking lot. The search to find and bring her killer to justice would take decades and would come down to the testimony of an accomplice who decided to finally set the record straight.
Growing up, I always remember music in the house. I always remember her cooking and kind of dancing and smiling. She had a big, like, bright smile on her face all the time. She was very full of life.
She was silly, happy, silly, silly, silly. And she could make anything, twist anything in to make you smile or laugh. She would never come to my house empty-handed. Sherri would always be there. If I was struggling, she'd be there to help me, help me with my kids. She was the most generous, kind, giving person.
It was just me and my mom for a while. And then shortly after, Greg came into the picture. Greg is the first, male figure that I can remember coming into our lives. He'd come and get me from daycare and we'd go fishing. There was this little dock kind of on the side of the base. And we'd go fishing out there. Greg had a previous marriage where he had 2 children. So that goes from just me and my mom to me, my mom, Jamie, Greg, Ashley, and Big Greg. I have a lot of fond memories of him being a fun guy and taking me to do stuff and caring for me.
But Jacob says things changed when Sherri deployed to Greece for a year.
Mom leaves for Greece and things drastically change. And we start seeing some real physical abuse for the first time. He'll grab you by the throat, put you up against the wall, and he wouldn't punch me in the face, but he'll punch a hole right next to your head. So there's holes in the drywall right next to us. It was a rough life for a year.
But when Sherri came back from Greece, life appeared to return to normal.
We felt love again. Our home didn't feel like an empty shell of a house, but it felt like a home again, like there was a life in our house.
But tragically, that life would soon flicker out of the Malarik household as one fall evening, Sherri vanished from her own home. Sherri Malarik was last seen here at her home at around 6:30 in the evening on September 21st, 2001. Her children remember her saying she was going to go out back to speak with their father, Greg. When he got back in the house, he said that she went to go pick up some milk. Sherri never returned home. As the hours passed and Sherri still hadn't returned from the store, Jacob remembers Greg coming back into the house from their backyard.
Greg comes inside, and he starts rushing us to kind of get ready for bed. At this point, I don't remember anybody freaking out about Mom or anything.
When Sherri still hadn't returned by the morning, Greg started calling the authorities.
Good morning. My name is Greg Malarik. I'm calling to see if maybe you guys had an accident report up for my wife. I'm very late getting back.
Well, okay. How long ago?
7:30, 8 o'clock last night.
What type of vehicles you drive?
Red Dodge Caravan.
We went to sleep, and the next morning, roughly around 6 o'clock in the morning, phone rings, and it's Greg saying that she never came home. I tell Tina I'm going to look. And I get in our van, I take off. just started driving back roads because we're new to the area. And I started heading south. And I don't know, 8 miles later, I'm at the Winn Dixie park line. And I look over and I see a van. I said, oh, that could be it. I pull up in behind it, and it's her tag number. I park my van. I walk up to the windows. I was walking up. It looks, I start seeing a little blood, and I look down, and there's Sherri. I'm beating on the window, calling her name, Sherri, Sherri, trying to open up the door. Reach in, I grabbed her, and at that moment, I knew she was dead.
What is your emergency? There's in her van. She's been, I don't know if she's been shot or okay, have you can't tell if she's alive or not? She's dead, man.
We drive down to the parking lot. My husband's arms are stretched out. He's crying, shaking his head, and he's crying, walking towards the vehicle.
I remember sitting in Aunt Tina's living room, and she said, Mom's in heaven. I just laid on the trampoline, like staring at the sky for hours. I just laid there all day.
Buddy Nesmith was one of the homicide investigators called to the scene.
Grab my briefcase and off I go to the Winn Dixie.
He arrived armed with a camcorder.
We were using the VHS camera. That was something new for us, something new, and we were all learning what we needed, how to focus, how not to be too fast. I ruled out robbery once I seen the body. She had been, in my opinion, stuffed into the floorboards in a very unnatural position. I did see blood splatter evidence on the door jamb, the passenger seat. The blood splatter itself appeared to be the high-velocity type blood splatter, which indicated some type of gunshot wound. The fragments that were found were similar to a .25. Very small caliber, probably fits in your hand.
And we know from a defect in the headliner of the vehicle that the shots were fired from inside the vehicle, coming from the left to the right. The shot was likely fired by somebody on the driver's side of the vehicle.
Not long after I got there, they went to the house and brought Greg back to the scene. He never approached the van. He never asked me about her. And I was like, Greg, who could do this? You have any idea? Why did she leave the house? I mean, I'm just question after question, and he never responded.
Police initially spoke with Greg here in front of the minivan where Sherri was murdered.
I learned early, working cases, people grieve different. You can't put a whole lot into it. He was weird, standoffish. You can't rule anybody out. At that point, Greg was the last person to see her alive. So there's the first point of interest. I had Jeff Leake, who found the body, who is also a known person to the victim. I then asked Greg and Jeff that if I could test them for gunshot residue.
After Sherri's death, Greg's behavior struck many as odd.
Greg went to the Winn Dixie. They took fingerprints and whatnot there. Again, Greg didn't show any emotion. He didn't cry. He didn't ask any questions.
A few days after her body was found, Sherri's family and friends gathered to say goodbye.
When we were at my mom's funeral was another one of those moments where things just didn't seem right. We're at the funeral, I'm sobbing, and Greg, the whole time, he's just sitting in the front row, very cold and very still. He's not really crying. He doesn't seem emotional at all. He's just like a stone.
To piece together the final hours of Sherri's life, police interviewed those who had last seen her alive, her children.
Can you tell us your name?
Jacob.
Okay, what's your last name?
Malarik.
I remember us having to go sit down and talk with the sheriff's department, and they asked us questions and got statements.
Trying to find out what happened to your mother, okay? When did you last see your mom before your aunt told you that something had happened to your mother?
After we got home from soccer practice,
Okay.
I saw her walk out the back door, and that was the last time I saw her.
As she stood by the doorway, the last thing Jacob remembers hearing his mother say was that, "I'm going out back to speak with your dad." Investigators also spoke with Jacob's brother, Greg Jr.
Did you ever look outside when your dad was outside?
I looked out the window.
What did you see going on outside?
Fine.
By then, night had fallen, and Greg said he saw his dad by the burn pit in the middle of their backyard, where he was burning something.
Did your dad usually burn the fire at night, or did he burn it at other times in the day?
He burns it normally at other times in the day.
Okay.
And then Greg comes inside, and kind of in passing, I don't remember who it was, looked up and was like, "Hey, where's Mom?" And he said something to the effect of, "She's going to get some milk." Quick response, on his way to his room.
Tell me about what he did when he came back.
He went into the bathroom and he took a shower. And then he went to his desk and started doing paperwork.
And that's where I hear Jennifer is at our house. So we have not seen Jennifer in the 3 or 4 months since Mom's been home. We haven't seen her once. My brother Greg went outside to help her unload a lawnmower and take the lawnmower to the back shed.
That night, was there somebody that came over to the house?
Yes, Miss Jennifer.
Okay, who is Miss Jennifer?
A lady that my dad works with.
Did you meet Miss Jennifer before or after your mom left for Greece?
After.
She was introduced to us as our babysitter. So I knew that she was in the Navy. I knew it was somebody that our parents worked with.
Do you remember the night when Miss Jen come over and had wine bottles?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that night.
When she came over, she had a bag and it had wine in it.
After Greg sent them to bed, Jacob and his brother, Greg Jr., saw their dad and Jennifer lying on the floor, curled up next to each other and drinking a bottle of wine.
And then the next morning when we woke up, we got up, we were looking around, and then we saw some of Miss Jennifer's stuff, her purse and her shoes and her glasses.
From that day on, my brother Greg and I knew something was going on with them.
At that point, I got a wife that's been murdered. I got a husband that's the last person to see her alive. And then you get the bombshell information. There's a girlfriend in the mix. Well, already the red flags start going up.
Coming up, investigators target Jennifer Spohn in an effort to get the person they believed is the mastermind behind Sherri Malarik's death, her husband, Greg.
He got out of the car, I went to the back of the house, and told me to wait a few minutes, and then come knock on the door.
Mark Smeester and I reach across the table and give each other a little fist bump. We know that we're on a very good track here.
When he did it, if I had said something right then, who knows how it happened but the person who did it. And I knew right then he had me, and I didn't know what else to do.
After Sherri Malarik had been found brutally murdered in a Winn Dixie parking lot, suspicion fell on her husband, Greg, when it was revealed that he'd been having an affair with Jennifer Spohn, who just happened to show up at the Malarik's house the night Sherri disappeared. But initially, all police had was suspicion. That suspicion deepened when the sheriff's office found out the results of their gun residue test.
After the kit was analyzed and the report came back, we got a positive on Greg Malarik and a negative on Jeff Lee.
So Nesmith called Malarik in for an interview.
He said he would speak to me, but would not be recorded.
Greg gave little information, saying that he saw Sherri around 7:30 to 8 p.m. at their house, and that her last words to him were that she would be right back, and that he had assumed she was shopping. In response, Nesmith was blunt.
I just told him, you harm your wife, There's no if, nor buts about it. Well, never spoke to him again.
Nesmith next spoke with Jennifer Spohn, who was somewhat more forthcoming.
Sherri and Greg Malarik both worked at the Naval Air Station just over the bridge behind me. And when Sherri was deployed to Greece for a year, this is also where Greg met Jennifer Spohn.
She admits that she knows him. She admits that she's had an affair with him. She admits that it's still going on, and she admits that she was there that night taking lawnmower back. She's involved. There ain't no way around. She's involved. Now, to what extent, I don't know, because we got to treat them with kid gloves, because we don't know. We're still fishing.
And Jennifer is key, because while the evidence points towards Greg, the police lack a smoking gun, tying him to Sherri's murder.
Tons of very incriminating circumstantial, but we're lacking that one little nail. Just one.
With the pressure on to indict Greg, getting Jennifer to talk was more urgent than ever.
They brought in the commander or somebody and pretty much said, if you cooperate, you're able to re-enlist and pick your duty station, and you can have a career in the Navy. She'd asked to go outside and think about it, have a cigarette. She just bolted, and that's the last I ever seen of her.
Without the cooperation of the person they believe to be Greg's accomplice to murder, prosecutors are faced with a difficult reality.
All the evidence is certainly pointing toward one person, but we have no direct evidence. I mean, this is purely circumstantial.
Sherri's loved ones try to keep up the pressure, posting a reward for information about her death and speaking with the press whenever they could. Meanwhile, Jacob and his brothers are still living with Greg, certain he is the one who killed their mother.
I don't have a doubt in my mind, right? Like growing up in that house, there are moments I'm terrified, right? Like as a kid, I'm sleeping with a knife under my bed. I don't say that lightly. I'm terrified.
Months passed, then years, and Sherri's death becomes just one of many unsolved murders in the area. But then in 2020, a new sheriff comes to town.
A state attorney's investigator named Wainwright and an NCIS investigator, Mark Smeester, start investigating the case again, taking a new look at it.
It was a cold case, but in any major crime, in any of our homicides, it's constantly being reviewed.
He basically told me, you know, this has gone on for too long, and he kind of apologized.
The key, as usual, was Jennifer Spohn.
She was going to be the biggest question mark that we had to answer.
For once, the passage of time worked in the prosecution's favor, and when contacted, Jennifer was much more open to talking.
They're going to fall out of love sooner or later. God, did I not think it'd take 20-something years to happen, but it happened.
Everything really changed when they interviewed Jennifer Spohn again.
Jennifer had split up with Greg Malarik and had moved to Illinois. She knows more, but she's never told us. We know she knows more. We just have to find a way to get her to tell us that. It's time to go talk to Jennifer.
March 6th was the first 2 interviews that they did with Jennifer. Jennifer doesn't say much.
Is there anything that you can share with us that will help us understand what happened that night? Nothing.
She was sticking to her guns, and she wasn't giving us anything groundbreaking information.
I didn't say much. I didn't give them anything, I guess, that they could use. And the sheriff there in my town was standing outside. He says, I've read the case. I've read what they have. And it seems cut and dry. And you need to make a decision as to what side you're going to be on this. He says, but you're only going to get this one opportunity. And I said, okay, thank you. And then I drove home. They called me a little bit later, and they said, do you think you can come back in? That's when it went through my head. I said, this is it. This has got to end. We cannot continue doing this. My youngest son was in junior year, so I had a talk with him, and I let him know where the car keys were. I let him know that this was all coming to a head, and there's a good chance that I would be arrested, and I wouldn't be able to talk to him.
The other thing that we decided to do was go ahead and arrest Greg Malarik.
Greg was arrested last night. Okay, so we're a lot farther in the investigation.
We're not playing. Greg is in custody. This is going forward.
They have assured me that they are not interested in charging you.
Here's full use immunity. We will not charge you, but you have to tell us the truth.
They said I had immunity. I didn't believe them. People come in, you gotta make signatures. There was none of that.
Can you arrest him? Get a drink on?
Mark Smeester and I reach across the table and give each other a little fist bump. And that's about all the emotion we're going to display at that point in time. But yeah, we know that we're on a very good track here. Jennifer comes back in the room and she tells us that when she had been with Greg in the past, that he had talked about killing his wife. She said she didn't think he was serious about it. She tells us that it had been arranged that she would meet him in the Winn Dixie parking lot.
So when I did go over to Winn Dixie, the whole way I'm thinking, there's no way he did it. Surely he would have backed out at the last minute and realized he couldn't do that. And I was wrong.
Did you know what was inside the van?
I had a suspicion.
When I got to Winn Dixie and he got in the car, I knew.
Greg gets in her vehicle, tells her to drive him home, to obey all the speed limits, don't attract any attention, just drive home normally.
I saw him get in the car and I drove to his house, and the whole way I'm thinking, why did I let it happen? Why did I get this far? What am I gonna do now?
And she says that they pull out on Highway 29 and that Greg throws a wig out the window of her car onto the shoulder of the road.
And he threw something out? Do you think it's a wig? Why do you think it's a wig?
Because it was fuzzy.
It was fuzzy.
It was dark, but it was fuzzy.
Once she said it, I could then further picture in my mind how this was likely to have gone down. It would make sense if he would put on a long black wig, so if a neighbor takes a quick glance, oh, there's Sherri going to the store.
He got out of the car, went to the back of the house, and told me to wait a few minutes, and then come out on the door.
I thought we got the vast majority of what she knew. I mean, she admitted she put Greg at the scene. You know, she admitted to driving him back to the house.
I said just enough that they were like, okay, we've got something. I was very surprised that they didn't arrest me, and they said that the immunity was real, which I was like, really?
It was almost better than a smoking gun. It was someone actively involved in the homicide. The case suddenly had legs, and that's when the case of Gregory Malarik began.
Coming up, over 20 years after Sherri Malarik was found brutally murdered, her husband Greg goes on trial for her murder.
All these years, all I've ever wanted was justice for what happened to my mom. I want the person who did this to be held responsible.
His action was just to pull out the revolver, and it went off.
Two people accidentally shot.
Alec Baldwin was the actor on set. Alec Baldwin? Yes, sir.
Hurry, hurry, hurry was the motto on the set.
Right away, let's reload.
Alec Baldwin claims he didn't pull the trigger. Well, the FBI disagrees.
It's not going to fire until you pull the trigger.
They really do have to show that he couldn't care less.
The Case Against Alec Baldwin premieres next Sunday, 9/8 Central on Court TV.
It had taken over 2 decades, but after prosecutors convinced Jennifer Spohn to talk, Greg Malarik was arrested for the murder of his wife, Sherri.
I got a phone call from our Aunt Tina that they had just arrested our dad. I was just in a state of disbelief. I never thought in a million years an arrest was going to be made or that anything was going to happen.
Greg Malarik's trial for the murder of his wife, Sherri, was held in 2022 at the Escambia County Courthouse behind me.
All these years, all I've ever wanted was justice for what happened to my mom. where I feel like she'd just been forgotten.
But justice for Sherri would have to wait, at least temporarily.
I don't remember there being any big problems. Everyone came, they contributed their little segment of what this case was, and then the jury wasn't out very long for the first trial, and they'd only been out for a couple of hours before they came back and said that they were deadlocked.
It was almost a conviction. There were 2 jurors that couldn't say guilty.
After a mistrial, we could offer a plea deal to the defendant. We could drop the case completely, or we can go back for a whole other trial. And in this case, we decided to take it to trial again and, see what happens with the second jury.
Greg Malarik's first trial for the murder of his wife, Sherri, resulted in a hung jury.
In October of 2023, his retrial was held in room 405 of the Escambia County Courthouse in Pensacola, Florida.
Amy Shea was the lead prosecutor on this case.
He doesn't want to be married anymore. He wants to be divorced.
The prosecution's focus was on Greg Malarik and the affair that he had with Jennifer Spohn.
He suggests it would be easier to kill her than to divorce her. The motive was that there was this affair. He wanted an easy way out.
The prosecution's theory was simple.
He killed his wife in the backyard, in the family minivan, with a .25 caliber firearm, and then had an elaborate plan to dispose of her body, all while using the children who are in the house playing games and eating pizza as his alibi. It was all circumstantial, so it was piecing together where everybody had been and who had talked to the defendant and what the children remembered and what the other people remembered.
In Greg's statement to police, he said Sherri's final words to him were that she was going to the store. Shea called Jacob to the stand to contradict that narrative.
Did she say anything to you that made you think she was leaving the house or leaving the property or going anywhere?
No, she just said she was going to talk to our dad.
Did she ever say she was going to the store?
No, ma'am.
Another oddity was where Sherri supposedly went to shop.
Do you remember where she did her shopping, her grocery shopping?
Yes, so that alternated. 2 weeks of the month she would go to Walmart, 2 weeks of the month she would go to the commissary on the Navy base.
Did she shop at places other than the commissary and Walmart?
Not that I know of, no.
Did you ever go to the Winn Dixie with one of your parents?
I do not ever recall going into that Winn Dixie, no man.
Jacob's testimony also helped to link the murder weapon, believed to be a small .25 caliber pistol, to Greg.
Growing up, do you remember your dad having guns?
I remember he had a large revolver. I remember 2 9mm, and then I remember a small handgun.
What do you remember about this very small handgun?
We were told that he got it for our mom from a gun show, and it was small enough that it would take up the size of my hand.
We found a spent casing to a .25. The fragments were small. The round collected in the van was small. I'm no expert, but we're looking for a .25.
Prosecutors next called Jacob's brother, Greg Jr., to the stand.
At some point, were you asked to come outside?
Yes.
Why?
To help get a lawnmower out of the vehicle.
Out of whose vehicle?
Jennifer's car, her vehicle.
The same night that Sherri goes missing, Jennifer shows up mysteriously to return a lawnmower. Yeah, that's normal.
If there is a neighbor or a surveillance camera or something that catches her car in the neighborhood, she has to have a reason to be there. That lawnmower was that excuse.
She had a lawnmower in the back. Mm-hmm. Where did you take the lawnmower?
I took it to the shed.
And he gets the kids to participate in this alibi, too. Well, Greg, go get the lawnmower and put it in the back.
Shea next called Sherri's niece, Lisa.
Lisa was so important to the case because she was not only an eyewitness to seeing Sherri that night that she was murdered, but she also heard something immediately after Sherri had left the house.
Do you remember what your activities were that evening?
Me and Sherri played Barbies.
At some point, Aunt Sherri goes outside to the backyard. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you see her go outside the house from where you were?
Yes.
What happened after that?
She never came back in.
Now, while you're playing Barbies, do you remember anything else happening?
Yes, I heard a pop noise.
What kind of pop?
It sounded like a bottle rocket exploding.
How many pops did you hear?
I heard one.
Finally, Sherri's sister Tina took the stand and described Greg's behavior after Sherri's death.
Were you there when the sheriff's office was there to notify him that she died?
Yes, we kind of went together.
Okay. Were you paying attention to that interaction?
A little bit. I'm in shock and I'm worried about the kids, but he had like virtually no reaction.
Now, did he participate in the funeral planning?
He turned the funeral arrangements over to me.
In the week around the funeral, what, if anything, did the defendant do with Sherri's property and personal items?
The Tuesday night before the viewing and everything, he was disposing of her clothes, her shoes, her jewelry. He was eliminating all of her belongings.
When we return, Jennifer Spohn takes the stand.
If they forgive me, they forgive me, but if they don't, I can understand. It's hard to even forgive myself for this.
We're in the final stretch as the case against Karen Reed nears its end. Plus, Friday, hear from the loved ones left behind with a voice for victims.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
You will see the evidence, you will hear the arguments, and ultimately you will hear the verdict.
Closing arguments with Vinnie Politan. Weeknights at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
The jury in the Sherri Malarik murder trial heard damning evidence against her husband, Greg. But now they were about to hear from his accomplice and former lover, Jennifer Spohn.
The strongest part of Amy Shea's case was Jennifer Spohn. Amy knew that Jennifer Spohn had all of the evidence that she needed to put Greg Malarik away, and that was him telling her that he killed Sherri Malarik.
Will you raise your right hand for me? Solemnly swear or affirm testimony you give is the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, if you'll have a seat in the chair.
Everyone had been waiting for Jennifer to testify.
She's going to be the last witness because she's the one that's going to validate that all of these other things are the way they are because he killed his wife.
Do you know the defendant, Greg Malarik?
Yes, I do.
Were you involved in a relationship with him?
Yes, I was.
Did you guys try to keep this secret?
Yes.
After Sherri came back from Greece, where did you go to have private time with the defendant?
We met at a hotel a couple of times, and then other times we would just drive around.
Did he ever tell you that he didn't want to be married anymore?
Yes. He talked about him not having any relations with his wife, and he brought up not wanting to get a divorce, and it'd be easier to kill her.
What was your response?
I thought he was joking.
Why would you think he was joking?
Because I didn't think he could do it. The day of, I thought about it, and I was like, there's no way he's going to do this.
When he told you to come to Winn Dixie on that day, did you know why you would need to go to Winn Dixie?
He said that he would kill her.
When you pulled into the Winn Dixie, what did you see?
I saw the van. I pulled up next to the van. He got out of the van and got into the car. He told me to go. And he said, don't speed, just go normal. Went back to 29, drove down 29 until I hit Kingsfield, and then I drove to his house. It's a weird feeling. It's like you're in a void. And it's you don't know where to go. You don't know what to do. You don't know what to say. And you just kind of go through emotion.
When you got to the house on Riddle Road, where did you park?
Parked underneath the tree where the the darkest area was?
The Winn Dixie is so close to the house that that whole trip, round trip, could have been in less than 10 minutes.
Jennifer's description of events corroborated what the prosecution and Sherri's family had theorized.
The state's theory was that he shot her in the passenger seat of the van while the van was in the backyard.
Found that out in the trial through Jennifer, the mistress, that she was not dead after the first shot, so he shot her a second time in the head. At this point is when I imagine he's wiping off the blood off the passenger window, goes to the bedroom to take a shower, but turns on the water, climbs out the window.
Puts her down on the floorboard, puts on his wig, and drives up to the Winn Dixie at the appointed time. And then Jennifer picked him up.
And after I waited a few minutes, then I got out of the car and I went up to the front door and knocked.
He climbs back in the window, turns off the shower, comes back in, Jennifer knocks. They return the lawnmower, and off she goes with the evidence.
Why did you participate in this?
That's what he told me to do, and I basically was doing whatever he told me to do.
Did you always do what he told you to do?
Pretty much.
Why?
That's the relationship we had. Somehow, he just sucked me all the way in until the point where I really didn't think I could get out of it.
One reason Jennifer agreed to an interview was so she could give a message to Sherri's family.
I hope that all of them can find some peace. And I really am sorry that it happened the way it did. Really am. If they forgive me, they forgive me. But if they don't, I can understand. It's hard to even forgive myself for this.
When we return, Greg Malarik's defense attorney goes on the attack.
But that was the 5th time that she gave a story. And each story would change and change and change.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
While the prosecution had put on a strong case against Greg Malarik for the murder of his wife, Sherri, his first trial ended with a hung jury. This gave his lawyer a year to prepare for the retrial. That preparation showed as he confronted the evidence head on.
All these stories that have changed so many times, the actual things that happened that night is the most important. And when you look at it, the state cannot rule out all the reasonable doubt that you're going to see. They can't rule out all the things that we put up there.
Chris Crawford was the defense attorney on this case. He is more of a showman than Amy Shea.
In order to sow reasonable doubt in the jury's mind, Crawford presents an alternative suspect.
Jennifer Spohn in 2001 is pregnant with someone else's kid. She's broke, desperate, and has no idea what to do. And then she kindles up this relationship with Mr. Malarik.
Truthfully, it wasn't until the end of the week, we're talking the last day or two, that I kind of switch and say, all right, we're going to say Jennifer did it.
She's the one that, by the evidence, had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to do this.
Crawford also sought to poke holes in the stories of key prosecution witnesses.
All these kids, they all said, even from the beginning, Greg's at the house. When mom goes out, he comes in, he takes a shower, he doesn't leave.
You said that you didn't see Greg get out of the shower, right?
That's correct. The shower is in the bedroom.
When he came in and we're talking about him looking dirty, you didn't see a bunch of blood on him, right?
I did not look closely enough, but no, I did not notice any blood. This second time going around, it felt like me and my family, or my mom's side of the family, was on trial more than Greg was on trial.
Crawford also planted seeds of doubt about the actual importance of forensic evidence the prosecution had presented.
Let's talk about secondary transfers, right? You know what a secondary transfer is, correct?
That's correct.
And you can't tell us that this minimum amount didn't come from somebody who already had gunshot residue on his own hands because he was handling his gun, buying cigarettes and handling it to Mr. Malarik, right?
That's correct. I have no information on where his hands were and what he was in contact with at the scene.
The prosecution had spent 3.5 days presenting their case against Greg Malarik for the murder of his wife, Sherri. The defense spent just 4 hours presenting theirs, and they saved their strongest witness for last.
Chris Dayton testified via Zoom from an oil rig off the coast of Louisiana. He'd been an employee at Winn Dixie the night of Sherri's murder and had overheard an argument in the parking lot.
A minivan, a silver or gray Ford Festiva. The parts I could make out was that, "Oh, it's you, why don't you leave us alone?" And then the gentleman replied, "Shut up, bitch," and approached the passenger side.
What do you remember next?
We heard pop, pop, and then he turned around, and at this time, he was already walking back to his car.
What about the gentleman? Did you have a chance to see him straight on, or were you looking at the rear of him?
He had jeans, short shirt, very short hair.
You said short hair, is that correct?
Yes, about your shortness and length.
Coming up, the jury returns with a verdict. Over the course of 4 days, the jury had heard evidence of Greg Malarik's guilt from his family, from forensic experts, and his accomplice, Jennifer Spohn. But as the jury began to deliberate, those closest to the case felt uneasy.
Wednesday, when I left the courtroom, I didn't have a good feeling. I think I told my brother that. I was like, I don't have a good feeling. This isn't going to go well.
But the defense was feeling the same way.
When the jury was out, as the hours went on, I started getting more and more nervous. We could easily lose. Easily lose.
After 8.5 hours of deliberations, the jury finally came back with a verdict.
We, the jury, find as follows as to the count charged in the indictment. Not guilty, so say we all, this 13th day of October, 2023, Juror Bird.
I felt shock, relief. It was almost like this massive weight is pulled from the center of you. I was shocked. It was wild.
I think that maybe 20 years after the fact, it was just too much for them to digest, that someone waited 20 years basically to come forward and say, this is what really happened.
Justice was not served, and nobody's been held responsible. And I'm losing faith in the system.
We spoke with Kerry Walker, one of the 12 members of the jury, about their decision.
A lot of the jurors wanted that smoking gun. They wanted the physical evidence to be there. Testimony wasn't enough for them, and especially with Jennifer Spohn having immunity, a lot of them didn't find her credible because of that.
Eventually, she and another juror were the only holdouts for a guilty verdict.
I fully believe he's guilty. Unfortunately, after 5 days and 8.5 hours of deliberation, I just said, you know what, fine. I'm ready to go. Your doubt is my doubt. How about that?
Greg Malarik cannot be brought back into a courtroom and charged again for the murder of his wife, Sherri. But that doesn't mean her loved ones are ready to forgive or forget.
Just because you were found not guilty does not make you innocent. You've had the world forget about my mom for the amazing person that she was. I'm not gonna let the world forget about her. She was a super mom. She just was. She loved us unconditionally. I miss her and I love her, and our life was cold. And I just miss the warmth of having her.